Hey, everybody. This is Chris
and Kathy.
We wanted to take a minute to thank you all for tuning in. We appreciate every listener and are grateful for this platform.
Please help us share our vision by subscribing to our show through your favorite streaming app. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Petability Podcast.
Check out our ever-growing list of affiliates and sponsors. Simply go to the show notes for information and links.
And be sure to use our promo code PETPOD22, that's PETPOD 22, on checkout to receive your discount from our affiliates. And now, here's a word from our sponsor.
Hi, I'm Alon Landa, CEO of MedcoVet, and I'm a proud sponsor of Petability. We decided to partner with Chris and Kathy because, like them, we want to empower all pet owners who are trying to do the most for their pets. At MedcoVet, we specialize in advanced home laser therapy for pets. Laser therapy is a safe and effective treatment for common conditions like arthritis and wounds, and it relieves pain for most conditions caused by inflammation. With MedcoVet, pet owners can perform this treatment at home while receiving support from experienced clinicians. If you think your pet would benefit from healing at home, visit medcovet.com, and one of our clinical experts will work with you to determine if home laser therapy is the right fit for you and your pet. Tell them Petability sent you.
Having the ability for clients to have access to other licensed professionals whose expertise is within that field is integral in continuing to advance the care for our animal patients.
Welcome to Petability. I'm your host, Kathy Simon, certified veterinary technician and certified canine rehabilitation practitioner.
And I'm your host, Chris Cranston, licensed physical therapist and small animal physical rehabilitationist.
Our podcast provides interviews and information to help your pets live their best lives.
Good afternoon, Kathy.
Good afternoon, Chris. How you doing today?
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because we just concluded our Thanksgiving holiday. And on Thanksgiving Day for the last, I think, 22 years or something like that, has been the televised version of the National Dog Show. And I'll turn it over to you, my friend.
Long story short, the pug won the toy group and the pug won Best in Show. First pug ever to win Best in Show. And I was on my way on the Thanksgiving holiday to visit family in New York, and my phone started blowing up. Text message, bing, bing, bing. And I thought, oh, this can't be good. Why are there so many text messages coming through? And it was everybody I know is texting me. The pug just took Best in Show. Pug just took Best in Show. So I'm excited that my breed has been represented. My breed has been represented by a beautiful pug, and it has completely and totally gone to Mac's head.
So I know you always get excited and start talking about it as if people know, but yes, you have a pug named Mac, and you've had several pugs in your history as a dog owner.
Right.
So, you were talking about it going straight to Mac's head, and we do know he's a little full of himself, but I was actually worried that it was going to go to your head. I'm like, how am I going to be able to,
it has.
Yeah, be on this podcast with Kathy for a year? I'm going to have to live with this, that the pug won the Best in Show. Yeah.
Mac hasn't stopped talking about it since it happened. It's just...
Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. I was very excited to see my breed represented.
So moving on, another great guest today. And we have quite a history that we'll share, but our esteemed guest is Dr. Carolyn Adrian. And I know her as Carrie. When we met about 20 years ago, it was Carrie Adamson. So we kind of grew up together, but Carrie started before me and has certainly done a myriad of things in the field of physical rehabilitation for small animals.
When I think about the list of people that we've had on our show that are legendary, legends in the field of canine rehabilitation, Carrie, Lori Edge Hughes, Amy Hesbuck, the mother of canine rehab, Dr. Lori McCauley, it just keeps getting better and better and better.
I know. We're so lucky and fortunate, right?
Right.
So when I reached out to Carrie, I said, man, I was thinking about this. I'm like, she is really a pioneer a pioneer, a true pioneer in this discipline. And I thought through her telling her story, our audience, you, our listeners, will get an idea of how far this field has come in the last 25 years. It's a multidisciplinary field that when all of us started, and we'll talk about that during the show, it was brand new. It didn't exist per se. Any equipment that we use, we pretty much had to make. And now there's all this stuff out there, multiple websites and all, different kinds of wheelchairs, different kinds of harnesses and slings, different kinds of orthotics and prosthetics. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. So it really has evolved probably as quickly as the variant breeds within the dog species.
Right.
Pretty quickly evolving. And there are more and more certifications, coming aboard. One of our colleagues just sent us that she was recently certified as an arthritis management practitioner.
I saw that. Yeah, Jane, I saw that. Hi, Jane. Good job.
Hi, Jane. She's an avid listener. So, as I was thinking about this show, and again, kind of talking about, where we've come and where we're going to, I don't think that many pet parents realize how really fortunate they may be in that now you can just Google, right? Now we have technology like Google, which we didn't, 20, 30 years ago. And, canine rehab are near me. Pet physical therapy, near me, and come up with oftentimes a list. I think that, again, it's just growing and we're all trying to contribute to this field the best we can.
And with new programs, and we're going to talk to that a little bit with Carrie, owners can take comfort in knowing that these practitioners are trained well to treat their pets. So I think that gives, as an owner, would give me great comfort to see that title, see that certification, see that they went through a process that allows them to treat patients like, rehabilitation and so forth.
And thanks to passionate professionals like Carrie, who tirelessly and fearlessly led the way for the rest of us, here we are today. I actually wanted to include the story of when I first met Carrie, and it was very impactful for me because I had moved from Colorado out to the Boston area, and I was a physical therapist, and I didn't want to necessarily go straight away back into physical therapy. I thought, this is my chance to try something different, but what's that going to be? I'm sitting on the couch watching emergency vets, and I'm like, I'd start crying because, it'd be a heartwarming story with some animal on emergency vets. And then shortly thereafter, I discovered there is a new program at the University of Tennessee, and I wanted to explore this opportunity. Could I, as a physical therapist, enter into this program and make this a career? And I did. And my first course, I went back out to Colorado and took my first introduction class. And who was my instructor? Carrie. So before we officially introduce Carrie Adrian, I'd like to just highlight part of her very long and prestigious professional resume. So academically, she has her master's of physical therapy and a doctorate in canine biomechanics. She has a storied work history, including director of rehabilitation services for VCA animal hospitals, and is the owner and founder of Canine IQ and a consultant for Nutramax Laboratories. Carrie has had numerous teaching appointments and professional memberships spanning from 2001 to the present, including the American Physical Therapy Association Orthopedic Section and Animal Rehabilitation Special Interest Group, the Veterinary Orthopedic Society, the American Canine Sports Medicine Association, and the International Association of Veterinary Rehabilitation and Physical Therapy. And this leads me to share that she was, in 2021, the recipient of the Veterinary Rehabilitation Therapist of the Year award by the IAVRPT, just one of many prestigious awards that she has received over the years. And last but not certainly least, Carrie has authored many peer-reviewed and non-peer-reviewed publications in professional journals, written book chapters, and done scientific and professional presentations. Welcome to Petability Podcast, Dr. Carolyn Adrian.
Welcome.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate this opportunity. I'm listening to you say all these things, and I'm like, who's that person? It's a little bit surreal to realize this has spanned for so long. I think when you when you find a passion, it's not work.
I think before we start asking questions, because Chris and I have a lot of questions, I'd just like if we could clarify a little bit of terminology for our audience, because I don't want them to be confused, because what we all three are doing is physical rehabilitation. And so you may hear Chris and Carrie say physical therapy. That's okay. They are physical therapists and that's their terminology. You won't hear me say that because I'm not a physical therapist. So we may kind of oscillate between the terminology of physical therapy and physical rehabilitation. So just to clear that up for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, Kathy and Chris, because there's some terminology that can get a little bit confusing, out whether that's in the professional versus the clientele. And to understand as physical therapists, what we do is the practice of physical therapy. But that said, it's not necessarily legal in every state for every physical therapist to do just that. So sometimes we do have to use the term physical rehab or just rehabilitation. In Colorado, we are legal to practice on animals. That took us 4 years to change our practice act from the definition of physical therapy being on human beings to client and patient, which would include the treatment of animals with the appropriate additional regulations and training. So yeah, it's a good clarification to make.
Well, and since we're touching on that, that is also part of your storied history, is you went to battle with the Colorado legislature, if I remember correctly, to have that happen. And you actually have a separate licensure in Colorado.
Right. Well, and I give all credit to Deanna Rogers, who started the ball rolling with the physical therapy board and primarily the veterinary board to get their blessing for us as human physical therapists to transfer our skills to a veterinary caseload. So it was illegal on both routes. And funny story, I actually got a cease and desist letter when I first started back at Alameda East. Oh, wow. Yeah. And basically, you're going to lose your license if you keep it up. So talk about scary. That's where some of the terminology changes had to come from. And I think, the primary reason I was listed under veterinarians on our website at Alameda East Veterinary Hospital when I first started, they didn't know what to do with me. So they didn't have, they didn't have a heading titled physical therapist. So they put me under the veterinarians and it was construed as misrepresenting my professional license, which I get, it makes total sense. So, it was a bit of a struggle back then. And, we just ended up taking the comma out of my MS, PT. So my degree is a master's degree. It's a Master of Science in Physical Therapy. So I just portrayed myself as an MSPT instead of an MS, PT. So semantics, right? Yeah, it's semantics.
Wow.
But we have changed, we have since changed that. Deanna Rogers was instrumental. She gets all the credit in discussing with our veterinary board what those requirements would be, what that looks like for a human physical therapist, the additional training that we need to have a subheading, if you will. It's sort of a licensure under our primary PT license to hold a registration for animal physical therapy in the state of Colorado. And it took us 4 years. We took us from 2003 to 2007 to change the definition of physical therapy, but it's doable. And I want to encourage people, if your state is illegal, if you're having issues legislatively, let's talk, let's get that ball rolling. It's time to make those changes and allow more access to professionals.
Right. Thank goodness you did, because I think about your pet, recovering from anything, orthopedic surgery, some type of neurologic injury, osteoarthritis, just being a senior dog in general. The interdisciplinary team is extremely important in the outcome of that dog's recovery, right? With the physical therapist and their veterinary technician and their veterinarian, I think is the best possible outcome for patients who require rehabilitation.
Couldn't agree more, Kathy. And I think that's the ideal situation. So again, having the ability for clients, for people to have access to other licensed professionals whose expertise is within that field is integral in continuing to advance the care for our animal patients.
Carrie, let's go back to the very beginning. I mentioned emergency vets, and you mentioned Alameda East. What's your connection?
Oh my goodness, I got lucky, ladies. I met my mentor, who is essentially, he's like my second dad, and to this day, Dr. Bob Taylor is a dear friend, and I just love that man and honor and respect him so much. He gave me a shot. He gave me this history, this opportunity to become involved in a field where it was brand new. He was such a visionary. And I actually took my very first equine physical therapy course. It was back in 1998 up at Cornell. And I was a second year PT student at the time. And it required me to miss a day of classes because I flew from the Atlanta area up to New York and took an equine rehabilitation course with Dr. Kevin Hostler, who, little did I know, 9 years later would become my PhD advisor. So very small world. And my PT program in the Atlanta area, North Georgia, said, hey, this is not part of our curriculum. You miss these classes, you could be liable, from your license. And they were going to drop me a letter grade. And, careful consideration, this is, what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be. And I went and, look where it ended up. I think, taking a risk in life and knowing where you want to be. I didn't know this was an option either, but I needed to check it out. And then in 1999, after I graduated, is when I had a very dear friend, Kimberly Calvert, who she got me through PT school. Believe it or not, I did not want to work on people.
Believe it or not, neither do I, Carrie. Neither do I.
Kathy thinks there's nothing more gross than a person's foot.
I can't. I couldn't.
I take a dog any day. But Kim had handed me this flyer when we were in PT school and said, hey, there's the very first international symposium on veterinary rehab and physical therapy in Corvallis, Oregon. And so after I graduated, I took my boards, I became a licensed PT, and I flew to Oregon. I had moved home, was living with mom, trying to pay off some school loans, got my first pediatric home health PT job, and flew to Oregon. And there I was walking down the street, and Bob Taylor is coming the opposite direction and guided me to the registration booth. And it was, from there on, I was in front of the camera. I had an opportunity to talk about this to the local TV channels. I was in my glory. Like, this is it. This is where I want to be. And it all works out the way it's supposed to. I interviewed I applied for a position at the University of Tennessee with a PT and a vet there. And then Bob Taylor calls. And I think I about fell off my chair. He flew me out to do an interview. Spent that weekend with him and his family, and the rest, as they say, is history.
I don't know if we tied all the threads together, but Dr. Taylor was the primary doctor that was featured on the show Emergency Vets on Animal Planet, and it was one of the first shows of its type. Now there's a lot, Dr. Pohl, and the list goes on and on and on, but this was early on, and it was just amazing to get the behind the scenes look. And, he was great at explaining things. He's a surgeon, and, he would explain things and, what they were doing, and, back to my crying because like the dog would be hit by a car on death's door. And then thanks to Dr. Taylor and the rest of the team, they would be well and walking again and so forth. And so you were part of that process, and you were the first full-time physical therapist working in a private hospital in the U.S. Yeah, that was Alameda East, right?
That was Alameda East. That was my little claim to fame. Dr. Taylor, he did a lot of pro bono stuff for the Denver Zoo, which I was very fortunate to be able to participate in. But that's when they had the two polar bear cubs that were non-ambulatory, weren't walking, and Mary Lester jumped in. And then
Yes.
after that, I think Dr. Taylor really saw the value and the benefit of physical therapy. And that's when he hired me full time.
And I knew Mary Lester's last name because she was a premier physical therapist in the Denver area. So, yeah, Carrie, why don't you then talk about like what happened after Alameda East? Where did you go next?
Yeah, sure. So, I blame Dr. Taylor for this as well, but he dangled an opportunity for me to go back to school. Called me in his office one day and he said, "Do you want to go back to school?" And I looked at him and said, "No," and left pretty much.
No, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. And then, ears down, tail tucked, I came back and I said, I can't pass this up. And we had Thaw Foundation that sponsored the opportunity to get my PhD up at Colorado State. And we kind of made it up. We made up this degree, worked with the Orthopedic Research Center and the Clinical Sciences Department within the veterinary school up at CSU to design a canine biomechanics program, working with their engineering department, the veterinary school, and developed a program. It was supposed to be 3 years. It ended up being 4, but I would do it all over again. It was pretty amazing opportunity. And I ended up, which in hindsight is kind of funny and ridiculous now. I look back on that, but I ended up having 7 faculty as my advisory committee, which is unheard of. But yeah, usually it's 2, 3, maybe 4, but I ended up with 7 advisory faculty: physical therapists, engineers, small and large animal veterinarians, and veterinary surgeons. So it was an amazing process, and we looked at dog walking, right? That was the canine biomechanics and understanding dog walking better, which the focus of my PhD was related to the stifle, the dog knee, and cruciate rupture. So the muscle activation of the various muscles that stabilize the dog knee or the dog stifle.
Ben
You
Bletcher.
were working with Ben
Yeah,
Bletcher,
Ben-
right? We interviewed
Well,
Ben.
not through my PhD, but I ended up meeting Ben through his uncle. His uncle was really good friends with Bob Taylor. So I ended up meeting Ben, who was a CPO. He's a certified prosthetist and orthotist, and he was actually an amputee himself from childhood osteosarcoma. So as a teenager, he had bone cancer and ended up as a below knee amputee. And I've worked with Ben since the early 2000s. So that's been over 20 years as well. So he owns Medivet. It's a family of companies. So not only does he have Hero bracing, but he's got the wiggleless back brace. He's got the Medipaws, all the different various protective covers. Yeah.
And we actually interviewed him regarding dog legs and the shoulder stabilization system.
Very cool. Yeah, that wiggleless back brace with dogs with DM and amputation and trunk stability. And yeah, so I've known Ben, I think you just get to know such a small world in this field. It's amazing. It's absolutely wonderful. We're internationally, it's a pretty tight-knit group as well. Everybody knows each other, and
We all know each other.
Well,
and it's amazing. Yeah.
I name dropped you, Carrie, when we were interviewing Ben, because I said that I was at the conference. You co-presented about bracing. I saw in your, list of publications and such, the title of one was "To Brace or Not to Brace." And I thought that would be a great topic to have on our show, because we get asked that question a lot.
Yeah.
Should I get a brace for my dog? Do they work? What do I look for? There's all kinds of price points, blah, blah, blah. Would you be interested in coming back and talking about that?
I would love to do a conversation on that. And maybe we can have, clients call in and maybe we can discuss, some real specific cases. And, certainly without evaluating, I can't do a ton, but we can at least discuss, some opportunities for bracing and when not to brace.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Well, I was just thinking, as you're saying it, back when I started as a technician, I was working at Angel Animal Medical Center in the, mid 80s.
Oh, neat.
We were probably one of the most premier animal hospitals in the country at that time. And we did everything except bracing. because it was just too difficult to do. So I would love to hear about that. And then again, just going back to where we've come from, we didn't brace in the 80s. One time I saw a dog in a wheelchair in like 1988, and I was like, what is that? Because it just didn't exist and we weren't doing it. So I would love to hear more about bracing or not.
Absolutely.
Brace or not.
Happy to do it. Yeah, it's a topic near and dear to my heart. And, certainly we don't have all the answers, but I'm more than happy to share my experience and different cases we've done and, what's working, what's not working. We're doing some really neat, fun things with Achilles tendon and bracing non-surgical for Achilles ruptures. That's been working wonders. We've gotten some dogs back to hunting just through PRP and orthotics. And yeah, we could talk all afternoon.
We could talk all afternoon about function and its importance,
Oh,
alone. But
yeah, that's why we're here.
Right. As you're talking too, I'm kind of thinking about, what would it be like as a physical therapist to transition to animal rehabilitation or veterinary medicine? What do you think was the one thing that was difficult or interesting or challenging from transitioning to humans to the quadrupeds?
Kathy, I'm laughing because I wouldn't know. I practiced 2.5 months max, maybe, in human physical therapy, doing pediatric home health. But they're all similar, right? They poop, they pee, they bite. Between kids and animals, it's so similar.
Yeah.
So I pretty much came straight out of PT school and went straight into animals. Right or wrong, there's probably pros and cons to that. And, I'm still learning. And that's the beauty of this profession and the beauty of this collaboration is the opportunity to work with other allied professionals, to benefit our patients. But I think, being the very first physical therapist in a veterinary hospital, it was a lot of, who are you and what are you doing here? Honestly, it was the opportunity to educate. And I think that's been one of my passions, not just educating each other, educating clients, having the opportunity to bring this to light and really develop this has been an ongoing passion of mine. Well, and to really one by one, have other professionals, veterinary technicians aren't used to working outside of the field. Right. So at least in physical therapy, we have occupational therapists, we have respiratory therapists, we have
speech therapists.
We have speech therapists. Yeah. And we have doctors who specialize in rehabilitation medicine. So we're used to that collaborative team. So that was a bit of a hurdle, and I think sometimes it still is from the veterinary community in working with allied professionals.
I would agree with that. I don't know exactly why. Like at this point in 2024, rehabilitation should be standard of care.
Agreed.
But there's still resistance. And I started in 2003 and I was like, in 5 years, we're going to be standard of care. And then in 10 years, I was like, this is going to be standard of care. Right. In a lot of places it is, but still, it's still some places in veterinary medicine, it hasn't been as welcomed, right?
Right. Yeah. And that's legislatively as well. I've got a dear friend, Karen Atlas in California, who's been, for over 10 years have been working to change their Practice Act, and it's the vet board that's been, pushing back with that. So I don't understand where that resistance is coming from. This should be a no-brainer.
I don't know. And again, if you have somebody who's trained as a physical therapist in animal care or, a CCRP or CCRT, we're going to send those dogs and cats back to you if there's a medical issue. We're not going to take them from you. We're only interested in rehabilitating them. I'm not interested in managing your pancreatitis.
Right, exactly. But again, they're not used to, a DPT is the academic equivalent of a DVM, but they're not used to that same level referral, and understanding who we are and what we know. So I get it. That's all part of the educational process.
5 more years, standard of care, promise.
All right. I'm on it. I'm with you. I'm hearing you loud and clear.
I think this is a good segue to Canine IQ. Carrie, what was your inspiration in developing this program? And please describe for our audience exactly what it is and why you did it,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yep.
go
Yep.
for it.
So, after 24 years of clinical practice, it was time for a change for me. And, when I left the hospital, the specialty hospital where I worked, and when I left the director role for BCA Animal Hospitals, it was okay. What's next? And honestly, the education keeps coming full circle for me. This is something that I have done from day one of my career, and I'm very grateful and for these opportunities. And we had been looking, myself and my three other board of directors have been exploring opportunities to develop a PT program and training physical therapists, filling in the gaps of their knowledge, if you will, to be able to practice on dogs and cats, small animals, essentially. We looked at a variety of different continuing education programs for humans here in the U.S. We even looked overseas. Could we do something, a master's program we had conversations with the University of Liverpool. We looked at, a local physical therapy program, Regis University here in the Denver area. And it was all cost prohibitive. It was going to be $20,000 to develop a master's program, and it's just not doable.
Right.
And that's when we kept hitting walls. Well, then it's on me to do something. And that's really the impetus for the development of Canine IQ. And, I'm an N of one here, so we got to start out slow. But I have so many ideas to expand these type of educational programs. For me, it's a way to give back. I've been so grateful, so blessed with my career, and it is still a passion. It's just harder to get up and down off the floor, right? So how do you take that knowledge and all of that information that I have learned through so many within this field and be able to pass that down? And that's the whole goal of Canine IQ. And we're starting with physical therapists and development of a transitional canine physical therapist program. Again, filling in those gaps of knowledge as a licensed PT to be able to practice. What is it that you need to know as a licensed PT to practice on animals? And then, eventually expanding that to a clientele, a patient population or a client-owned population, and offering a variety of different avenues for education and training.
I looked at the program too, and I think, first of all, it's compared to what I paid for, some of my other certifications, very reasonably priced, Carrie, for what you're going to get. And it looks like there's an open enrollment twice a year for PTs. They can sign up twice a year.
Yeah, that's what we started this year. Again, this is my own sanity, right? So I did open enrollment twice this year. We'll most likely change that as things continue to grow in 2025. Well, this was the introductory price, but yes, the goal is to keep it inexpensive. And again, it's just to be able to pass this information down and expand the opportunity for physical therapists to understand and just realize there's a lot of PTs out there now that don't even realize this is a viable career opportunity for them.
Right. That was my issue. I always loved animals, but I was fortunate that when I did some research that the University of Tennessee program was just starting. So, I graduated from that program in 2004. And now I think there's 3 plus the Canine IQ program in the U.S. alone, plus programs abroad?
2 in the U.S. that allow all profession. Well, I shouldn't say all, but PT, veterinarians, physical therapist assistants, and veterinary technicians. 1 that's abroad, and now Canine IQ is for physical therapists only to start.
What are your feelings on expanding programs like this? So we have what did we just decide? 4 programs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I imagine in the future there'll be more, right? I would think as this profession grows.
I would think so, and I can't speak for the others. What the whole point of me developing this transitional, canine physical therapist was to focus on one profession. And I helped start, the whole Northeast Seminars program out of the University of Tennessee. And it's really difficult to give 4 different licensed professionals the information that they need to be competent.
The other thing maybe that's difficult sometimes for me to explain to the public is that although I have a certification in canine rehab and although I have certification in hospice and palliative care, I still have to follow the guidelines of my original practice act. So as a veterinary technician, I need to have a referral and orders and a diagnosis from a veterinarian. So sometimes that becomes confusing. It's like a little bit of a gray area. Sometimes they can go right off to the physical therapist. But for me, and probably for a lot of other people, we have to stick with the guidelines of our practice acts.
State to state is very different. But here's what's happening now as well. So that's part of it. We're doing a whole presentation in April in New Jersey through STAR. So we're doing a whole responsible practice. And what does that look like? If you have a program and you don't think that your graduates are meeting the competency requirements to practice, then what's the point of your program kind of thing? So there's a lot of discussion around that. And I decided to just pick one profession to start, focus on that. And the way I designed this whole Canine IQ, the transitional CPT program was based on our clinical standards of practice. So the orthopedic section, the animal rehab special interest group under the orthopedic section of the American Physical Therapy Association, I say that 5 times fast. We ended up doing a practice analysis and published that in 2019. And this is essentially what it takes to become competent in the field of canine physical therapy as a licensed human physical therapist. And I took the results of that and developed a program around it, thus your transitional canine physical therapist program.
What do the modules look like, Carrie? What are you covering?
Yeah, so the fun part is the collaborative, practice. I'm so grateful, so blessed to have the village, coming together, wanting to support this. And that was kind of the first eye opener for me that, Carrie, maybe you can do this. And talking to all of the friends that I've made, all of the acquaintances, the veterinarians, the technicians, the physical therapists who have been doing this and putting them in one room per se. And, taking the best of the best and saying, you have your doctorate of science in comparative anatomy. And okay, Cheryl, you write, the first 3 modules on anatomy. And Rob Gillette is a veterinarian, a sports medicine vet who used to be at Auburn, who's also with Nutramax now. And he did a lot of gait analysis with myself. That's our background. And then, looking at the very first module is more the principles of anatomy in comparative anatomy. And looking at what you already know as a human physical therapist. And again, what are the differences in the canine and the feline that you need to know to fill in those gaps of knowledge?
Right.
How are they different? In canine movement system. And then the second module are all veterinary specialists. So this is the fun part as a physical therapist in learning the fundamentals of the veterinary patient. What does zoonoses look like? So Mike Lappin, big name from Colorado State, was like, sure, Carrie, I'll help a friend. I was like, wow, this can happen. This is coming together. And working with the orthopedic surgeon and the boarded neurologist, from my old hospital, we're like, anything you need, Carrie, we're happy to help you. So here again, these bits and pieces kept coming together. And then I find out Lori Pranel, who's a veterinary nutritionist who now lives in France, but she worked for VCA and she grew up around the corner from me. You talk about a small world. I knew her brother and I were went through high school together. It's amazing. And now here's Lori, in France working for a nutritional company. And then, behavior and handling and diagnostic imaging and, what does a dog x-ray look like? And working with the director of the veterinary technician program whom I met at Alameda East. She started in January of 2000, and I started in February of 2000. And Kim Schmidt is now the director of the vet tech program here at Front Range in Fort Collins, Colorado. And she and another dear friend and their tech program are, doing a lot of information on imaging and handling and restraint and, some of the behavioral sciences and cardiopulmonary.
Yeah.
I have a cardiologist who's doing a lecture for us, oncology, internal medicine. So it's all veterinarians, veterinary technicians in module 2.
Radiology is where I got my beginning and my interest in canine rehabilitation because I was the assistant supervisor of the radiology department at Angel. And this is where I got my love, of that. And I like that it's very thorough. And I really appreciate that you also added behavior in there because I think as somebody maybe transitioning from human to animal, so important to learn the subtleties of animal behavior, right? There's a very famous video online of a woman doing an interview with a person who has a German Shepherd, and you can see all the signals that this dog is doing, that he's uncomfortable, and she leans over and he bites her on the face. And Chris and I are like, we saw that coming. And so there are subtleties to behavior that you may not know, until you start working with animals. So I love that there's a behavior aspect to it.
You bet. Well, and that's the goal, right? Is to bring the village together to get what we need as physical therapists. And it certainly, it can be dangerous. If you don't read the animal correctly, it can certainly be
get hurt.
Dangerous. Yeah, you can definitely get hurt. And, being able to read the animal and just training physical therapists for 24 plus years, the biggest hesitation that I see is, I don't know any of this. And they're very hesitant to touch the animal. I said, guys, you know this, it's bones, it's muscles, it's tendons, it's ligaments, right? It's all the same stuff. You're already a physical therapist. The similar, applications apply.
You already know this.
Right. But there's a lot of hesitancy in touching that animal, and rightfully so. If you don't know how to read it, like we said, it can be dangerous. And then, that third module is all the physical therapists, so Amy and Sherry O'Brien is a manual therapist, and Kelly Collier is a massage therapist and a physical therapist. And, Fran is doing a lot with, the business aspects of how do we build this out? Just doing rehabilitation and physical therapy with Lisa McHale and Janine Freeberg in the Chicago area. So getting people that have been doing this for a long time and being able to transfer their knowledge as well down to the next, generation of PTs. Right.
Carrie, what's the credentialing title once you go through the program?
Yeah, so this is kind of a play on us old physical therapists. When we were going through PT school, we didn't have the option to get our doctorate. So what the human market has done is to take all of us PTs with master's degrees and allow them to get a transitional DPT or a transitional doctorate in physical therapy, which again, just fills in those gaps of what a master's PT needs to become a doctorate in physical therapy. And so that's where this whole credential came from. We're taking you as a licensed physical therapist, transitioning your knowledge and skills to a small animal population, and you're coming out with a CPT for transitional canine physical therapists.
So just to summarize, because that was a lot of information. This is for licensed physical therapists to fill in those gaps to be able to treat canines and perhaps extrapolate to other small animals. It is all online. Currently, it is about $5,000. You said that's an entry-level price. Correct. There are 6 modules.
Correct.
Do people have clinical education within this learning experience as well?
Yep. Yeah. So to continue, and when you said it's all online, the first 3 modules are online.
Okay.
And that's the educational piece. So that's your foundation of anatomy and movement, your fundamentals of the veterinary patient, and your evaluation in physical therapy of the canine patient. And then the 4th module is in person here in Colorado. And that's the intensive hands-on depending on our group size, it's a good, 3 to 4 days of hands-on anatomy, palpation, examination, and we'll have the veterinarians here. We'll do an orthopedic evaluation. We'll do a neurologic evaluation. We'll do the manual therapy. We'll have the modalities, the orthotics, the Therex, the, et cetera, the handling, the behavior. What does it look like to just lay a dog down comfortably and safely to do a treatment? And what if your dog doesn't want to lay down? So there's a lot to learn on that front. And that's the intensive in-person is module 4. The module 5 and 6, we are requiring a capstone project, hopefully publishable. So the other goal of Canine IQ is to come full circle to be able to support research in this field and, kind of put back whatever we get out of this program and to be able to develop some additional research and knowledge base out there. So we're requiring a capstone project, and then module 6 is your clinical training. And that's very state dependent, depending on the number of hours of clinical experience that's required.
Well, I, again, applaud you because, as I said originally, you've been a pioneer, a rebel. You've gotten into trouble a few times, but
behaved women never make history, Chris.
That's right.
Amen, sister.
Yeah. So, it was your calling, and here you are, and, you're legitimizing physical therapists in the veterinary industry. It's just ironic. I think that you were the first one, in a hospital. And then now you're, like you said, full circle and creating this opportunity for more that may not even know it's possible. Also, I think, there's still a huge need out there. So the more professionals that we have that are competent and able to do this, the better, because there are 60 million pets in America right now. They all get older, experience injuries, have disease processes, whatever. Again, people say, well, how do you treat a dog? What do you treat a dog for? And I say, anything that we treat a human for, we can treat a dog for.
That's
right?
my response as well. Exactly.
Yeah.
You got it.
So there's just so much need. And, and Kathy and I were talking too about how, when we started, and I assume it's still kind of the same, that it often requires a pay cut from the PT world to work in the animal world. Is that still true, or is that equating a little bit better?
I don't think that's the case anymore. Now, of course, demographics is going to play a role in that. But I have seen, especially working with VCA for so many years, I've seen a variety of different models. So you can. And I think this is one of the hesitations for physical therapists to leave human practice is what do these opportunities look like?
Yeah.
The hesitation in that comfort and safety of a human job, it's really difficult to step away from. But I have seen these opportunities continue to grow, whether it's as an employee, which is what I've done my entire career. I had a lot of people ask me, well, Carrie, why didn't you go out and start your own business? Well, frankly, I don't like the business aspect. I wanted to keep my hands furry, right? Like that was my whole focus. I didn't want to take away that clinical aspect to have to focus on business. So I stayed in a specialty hospital my entire career, and the opportunities are out there to, maybe you end up renting space, if you will, even if it's an exam room out of a general practice veterinary hospital. Maybe you're an employee of a veterinary specialty hospital. Maybe you contract, for that particular position. And maybe you do home health. Maybe you develop your own clinic and your own, half and half. I know a lot of physical therapists that are still doing half human, half veterinary to keep their hands, involved in both.
Well, I'm happy to hear that because I do remember, again, getting in on the ground floor and, coming out with my certification in 2004 and having so many physical therapists around me also pursuing this and coming to where I worked, to do their clinical hours and volunteer and, various things. And many of them either didn't continue to pursue the certification or went back to treating people. because of need for insurance, potential pay cut, difficult hours, whatever it was, because there weren't that many opportunities, 20 plus years ago.
Right.
And so again, it's very heartening, thanks to people like you and other folks that you've mentioned during this podcast, that we have come this far, that there are opportunities, that you can carve your own path, make your practice look like you want it to, and be appropriately compensated for the very hard work. It can be backbreaking. And at least as physical therapists, we should know proper human biomechanics.
Right.
This is largely, in my opinion, client driven. Clients are looking for the best possible care for their pets. And the combination, like we said in the beginning, of the interdisciplinary team, your physical therapist, your veterinarian, your vet tech, is going to give us the best possible outcomes for your pet. So they're looking for it. They want acupuncture. They want rehabilitation. They want chiropractic. And we should give it to them. I've been a technician for about 35 years. I wish we knew it then. I wish we knew this 35 years ago. I wish we were using this approach 35 years ago. It would have changed the lives of so many animals if we had just, if we had just taken that in at that time, right?
Yeah. And I would say that physical therapy rehabilitation is a common term within the veterinary hospital today. Yes. From 20 years ago to today, it's probably used on a daily basis. Yes. Certainly you have to be aware of state practice acts. And I do want to put that little asterisk out there when it comes to, practicing. There's still a lot of physical therapy boards that aren't necessarily wanting to support it. There's a lot of human physical therapists that don't necessarily support what we're doing. And, 20 plus years with, under the American Physical Therapy Association, it's still an uphill battle. Although they've become a lot more supportive, we still have a long way to go. So know your practice act, understand the legislation in your state, because it is not legal in every state yet. That is the goal.
And to Kathy's point, I remember, again, 20 plus years ago, and people were like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I do physical rehabilitation for dogs. And they're like, what? And I'm like, I'm a physical therapist, but I treat dogs now exclusively. And they're like, really? Is that a thing? And now the response is, oh, that's so cool. I wish I knew of you 5 years ago when, Benny was having trouble walking. And so, like you said, people driven, client driven, the terminology is percolating through all the avenues, whether it's professional or, pet parents and all the paraprofessionals. And, I think we've got a great thing going. Carrie, as we wrap up, are there final words that you would like to share?
Again, I just appreciate catching up with you ladies, and I appreciate all of your efforts within this field as well. And I love this collaborative practice, and I hope it can continue, to see the changes in this field to the betterment of our furry patients. And again, thank you for the opportunity to share some info on Canine IQ, and feel free to reach out to me anytime at Carrie at Canine IQ at CANINEIQ.net. Thank you, ladies.
The website for the program is canineIQ.net.
Yeah, it's spelled out CANINEIQ.net.
Yeah,
perfect.
Yeah, very good. And I was going to actually say the same thing to you, Carrie. If somebody calls in sick or something, and you need, somebody to oversee some, lab stuff. No pun intended. I'd look for an opportunity to go back to Colorado, and I still own a house out there.
Would love to have you both out here. It would be really fun. So let's figure out.
As long as you promise I don't have to touch any human feet, I will be there.
Oh, girlfriend, don't worry. I stay far away from it. So maybe, Kathy, we need to develop some stuff for Tex as well. So we'll talk.
Yeah, we can talk. I mean, I also have an interest in exotics, and I work for an avian veterinarian, and I think that this is an area where things, where rehabilitation can grow, because I see ducks and chickens and turkeys and birds and iguanas and rabbits and guinea pigs, and the principles apply to all of those animals, and they deserve that treatment too. So I love to see that it's going to grow, and I hope that it grows into bigger and better things for all animals. Fin, feathers, fur. I don't care.
Yeah.
It's
and I love it.
to sing Kathy's praises, she mentioned her palliative care and hospice certification, but she's also fear-free certified and, believes very much in that, as do I, but I'm not certified. But she has a lot of particular niches that she can.
We need to do a lecture.
I made a wheelchair for a guinea pig once. This was probably about 15 years ago, and it went on the internet and it went viral. And for 3 years, people called me guinea pig wheelchair girl. They didn't even know my name, but that's how they.
You gotta love social
That's the guinea
media.
pig wheelchair girl. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was my 15 minutes, Carrie. That was my 15 minutes.
Hey, we all have at least one minute of fame, right? Ladies, I can't tell you how good it's been to catch up. Oh, so much. All right, ladies.
Carrie, it was wonderful to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Carrie.
Well. All right, guys. Take care. Talk soon.
Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoyed our show.
Follow us on social media at Petability Podcast.
And please check out our affiliates and sponsors.
Simply go to the show notes for information and links.
Thank you, and tune in next time.